All right, it's a Tuesday edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We're, depending on when you watch this thing, less than 24 hours. Actually, no matter when you watch this thing, we're less than 24 hours until signing day. The faxes start rolling at 7 a.m. tomorrow. And despite all that, we have a lot to talk about that doesn't actually have to do with signing day today on the Morning Pitt. It's kind of weird how that works out, but we'll have plenty of time to talk about it tomorrow. Believe me. As you're waiting for the faxes to roll in, you'll have a good Morning Pitt video to watch tomorrow morning. Throughout the day, we'll have lots of video content on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Don't worry about that. What you need to worry about right now is liking this video and clicking the subscribe button. I looked at some of the numbers, and something like 40% of the people who watch these videos are not subscribed. Just click the subscribe button. It doesn't really require you to do much. You just click the button, and you are subscribed to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Let's try and get that percentage up. I mean, I don't know. First of all, I don't know what you guys are doing. That 40% who are watching this video and you're not subscribed, but then the other 55 or 60%, that's not all of our subscribers. So where are the subscribers out there? Why aren't you guys watching these videos? It's your daily Morning Pitt blast just to get you started for the day. You shower, you shave, and you watch the Morning Pitt just to know what's going on in the world of Pitt sports. And like I said, tomorrow is signing day. There's a ton to talk about with that, although we've covered a lot of those topics over the last 2 weeks plus. But we'll recap everything and have all the big storylines for you on the Morning Pitt tomorrow morning. Today, it's opt-out season. Or is it opt-out season? You know the hashtag, the SZN? Is that what the kids say? Do the kids pronounce it season? Do the kids say it like opt-out season? I think if you have to ask a question where you say, do the kids say it like this, then you are too old to be saying it. So I'm just going to go back to the way we used to say it like a year ago and call it opt-out season, because we had a slew of opt-out announcements yesterday. They all came yesterday morning. We should have seen this coming. I should have actually told you on the Morning Pitt yesterday that it was going to happen, because we were scheduled to talk with Pat and Narduzzi after Pitt's football practice yesterday. It was their first. They've practiced the last 2 Saturdays, really dove in on full-blown bowl preparation practice yesterday. And we were scheduled to talk to Pat Narduzzi around 12:30, which we ended up doing. But as soon as I saw that we were talking to him at 12:30, I said, okay, well, all the opt-out announcements are going to be coming now, Monday morning, so that they would all be out there before we talk to Pat Narduzzi, so we don't have to spend the whole time asking, hey, what's going on with Izzy Abanikanda? Hey, what's going on with Servassier Dennis? Hey, what's going on with this guy? Hey, what's going on with that guy? We don't have to ask him any of those questions. I figured that they would have those announcements be made public Monday morning, so we didn't have to ask him any of those questions. Now, there were still plenty of guys we did ask about, guys who didn't announce. But you got a bunch of announcements yesterday morning, pretty much all expected. I would say 4 guys announced that they're going to be opting out and either going to the NFL, foregoing the rest of their eligibility, or simply just skipping the bowl game to begin NFL draft and combine and pro day preparation. Israel Abanikanda, no surprise there. 3 years at Pitt. I think, if you roll the clock back to August, I keep bringing this up, and I'm going to keep bringing it up because it's one of those few predictions I got right, but at least I'm half right so far. I predicted that Pitt would have the ACC's leading rusher 2 years in a row, with Izzy Abanikanda this year and Rodney Hammond next year. Well, I got that half right. I got Abanikanda, but then part of it, if that prediction was going to come true, Izzy Abanikanda needed to not only lead the ACC in rushing, but then leave for the NFL after the season. So I got that right. And I think, I don't think anyone expected him to come back. I think if you're a running back and you are draft eligible and you have a year like Abanikanda just had, you go. You don't come back. Maybe you debate playing in the bowl game, but it's probably not even all that likely that would happen. You leave. You're going to the NFL. And that's sort of the standard. That's going to be the standard going forward. So he's gone. Gabe Hoy announced he's not going to play in the Sun Bowl. Deslin Alexander made the same announcement, and I mentioned those two guys, sort of put those two guys in a group because they were both super seniors. They had played their final year of eligibility at Pitt. Neither one of those guys was going to be able to come back no matter what. They're just not going to be playing in the Sun Bowl. And then the other guy to announce yesterday was Servassier Dennis, middle linebacker. I think it wasn't as much of a sure thing as it is with Israel Abanikanda. I think there was a decent amount of the Pitt fan base that pretty much expected SirVocea Dennis to go. I think most of the Pitt fan base knew Izzy Abanikanda was going to go. So it was sort of at least a little bit more up in the air, but he decides to skip. He would have had the potential to come back for one more year of eligibility as a super senior in 2023. He decides to skip that year, skip the bowl game, and head straight to the NFL. And yeah, I can't blame SirVocea Dennis. I mean, I'm not sure if there's much more he could have done at Pitt. I think he's a guy who probably projects to be an inside linebacker in the NFL. I don't know if that's a huge priority position in the NFL these days. I mean, it's not like, I mean, there are a number of defensive positions that are higher priorities with the NFL right now and the style of play in the NFL than inside linebacker. And I think you're going to be kind of undervalued as an inside linebacker. And Dennis, I mean, I'm not sure there's much more he could put on tape. I think the things he's going to have to do is go test well, run well, show some strength, and show an ability to keep weight up. I think he's still a little bit undersized, and he's going to have to bulk up a little bit, you know, and I think he was plenty big enough to play in college. His production, his statistics, his film all back that up. But I think if he's going to play in the NFL, he's going to have to get a little bit bigger. Now, SirVocea Dennis, whether he gets drafted or goes undrafted, I think he's going to make a team. He's going to at least be able to play on special teams, and I think he's going to probably hang around the league for a while, I would say. And then, you know, whether or not he can develop into a full-time inside linebacker will probably depend, at least to some extent, on what kind of bulk he can add and maintain. But I'm not really sure that there was much more he could do at Pitt. He could have another season with 10 or 12 tackles for loss, 4 or 5 sacks, maybe an interception or two, a couple of forced fumbles, 70, 80, 90 tackles. I mean, he could have another year like that, but he's had those years, a couple of them, 3 of them, I think, probably. I'm not sure he really stood to gain much by coming back. I don't know if he would have improved his stock all that much. So it makes sense for SirVocea Dennis to go. I'll say, before we dig deeper on these guys and then the other players they're going to be missing in this bowl game, other players who have decided to opt out and not play in the Sun Bowl, I think there's sort of 2 sides here. You're looking at 3, I guess, if you consider players who transfer. But we'll set transfers aside. But I think you're really looking at 2 groups of guys who opt out of the Sun Bowl or opt out of the bowl game, right? And this is what all colleges are seeing. And it's either guys who have remaining eligibility and they're deciding to leave college early to go to the NFL. And so they're going to skip the Sun Bowl or skip their bowl game to go on and end their college career and get ready for the NFL draft or whatever they have planned for the spring. And then there are guys who are out of eligibility, who wouldn't be able to come back either way, and they're just simply choosing not to play in their final game. And it's probably 2 sides of the same coin. But the ultimate message that gets sent, and it's a message that's been sent for a few years now, I always sort of put it on Christian McCaffrey. I feel like he was the guy who started this. I could be wrong about that. It might have been No, it wasn't a different Stanford running back. There was the Stanford running back. Who was that in the last Sun Bowl? Bryce Love? Was that his name? I don't know. Don't really care. But I was sort of go back. I think Christian McCaffrey sat out a bowl game, right? And that I feel like that was sort of the first one where everyone said, "Whoa, what? You're what?" And it sort of feels like since then, and I apologize if I'm misremembering about McCaffrey, but it feels like since then or over the last 5-6 years, there's been this sort of realization where people sit back and say, bowl game doesn't matter. Really doesn't matter. It's a game played for pride. It's a game played for the experience. But pride and experience don't really have a price tag on them. Pride and experience don't really contribute a whole lot to your future, and particularly if your future starts tomorrow. If your future starts the day after the bowl game, why wait that long? Why not start right now? And I go back and forth on this. I'm not going to begrudge anyone. We got Brandon Hill right there. He's another guy who decided he's not only skipping the bowl game, he's going to skip his final year or two of potential eligibility at Pitt and go to the NFL. And Eric Howlett was just on the screen there as well. He's got a decision to make. He's got the option to come back in 2023. Pat Narduzzi said, as of right now, he said this yesterday, he said, as of right now, or at this point, I forget exactly how he said it, he said Howlett's going to play. I don't begrudge these guys for making these decisions. They have to make, at a certain point, you have to transition into a business decision, mindset. As much as, when I say, when you're recruiting, you pick a school, you got to make a business decision. Well, now you're really making business decisions. You have to decide when you're moving into that next part of your career, into that professional part of your career. And if you decide that, hey, some bowl's not worth it, going to El Paso, it's not worth it, it doesn't matter. Kind of like Kenny Pickett decided last year, Peach Bowl is not worth it. Going to Atlanta doesn't matter. Damari Mathis made that same decision last year. And you've got, Izzy Abanikanda, Gabe Hoy, Deslin Alexandra, Servassier Dennis, Brandon Hill. Potentially more guys could join the group. They're all saying it doesn't matter. And I don't fault them. It's an exhibition game. It's a game that counts on your record, but it's not a conference game. It's an exhibition game. I think what concerns you the most is that slippery slope of when does it turn from the bowl game doesn't matter to we're eliminated from contention for the conference or the division. These games in November don't matter. Pitt was eliminated from the Coastal Division race. If not by the end of October, it was only a week or two into November they were eliminated. When does it start to seep into the regular season? And 2020 it did, right? To some extent. You saw guys opting out in the middle of the season. I think you've seen a handful over the last two seasons since then. But when does it start? Where the players start making a call of, basically, I just don't care anymore. And I don't say that in that way to be crass or paint their decisions in a bad light, because again, you're entitled to make your own decision. You have that autonomy. You're not getting paid. You're not under contract. You want to go? Go. But effectively, that's what they're saying. This doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. And that's, that creates sort of a dangerous situation. And I say dangerous as probably a hyperbole, but you do run the risk of it trickling down to fans and fans saying, all right, you know what? You're right. It doesn't matter. And I'm not going to buy season tickets because it doesn't matter. And I'm not going to buy merchandise because it doesn't matter. And I'm not going to contribute donations because it doesn't matter. And I'm not going to fly to the bowl game because it doesn't matter. And we could go into a whole sidebar about, fans always like to talk about playing for the name on the front of the jersey, not the name on the back. But then they start, whining and complaining when the guys with certain names on their back aren't showing up for the games that they want to attend. I don't even care about college football anymore. Well, I thought it was just about the name on the front of the jersey. But that will be a different conversation for another. We'll save that for some Morning Pitt in late February when we don't have anything else to talk about, or May or something. I'll try and get you all riled up by talking about how you should still cheer for the name on the front of the jersey. But it'll be interesting. It would be, I don't know if interesting or humorous. I don't know which the best word to use would be, but it would be something if ultimately what led colleges to treat student athletes as professionals with contracts and salary, income, money. If what ultimately led them to do that is waning fan interest. You are under contract. You will play through the end of November. You are under contract. You will play in the bowl game. If for no other reason, just to maintain fan interest. It would be interesting to see if that happens. I've heard different suggestions on what to do about the bowl game situation, bowl payouts. Bowls themselves could take out insurance policies on star players. If a Jordan Addison doesn't want to play or an Izzy Abanikanda doesn't want to play, the bowls could use NIL opportunities to potentially, basically give the players insurance policies in case they were to get hurt. I don't know. I feel like, you'd have to pick which players you're going to do that for. How much are you actually going to insure them for? Is it actually going to make up the difference of what they would have potentially made in the NFL? I think that's a tricky one. But, it's just it's another step toward what feels like a crossroads in college sports and in college football in particular. It's another step in what feels like we're moving toward a crossroads. And I don't know what's on the other side of that crossroads. I'm not even sure which issue is the crux of it. I'm pretty sure it's amateurism and professionalism and finding a way to marriage the two, and basically scrapping the former in favor of the latter. I'm pretty sure that's where it is, but I don't know what it looks like on the other side of that crossroads. But this is another one where it's a business decision being made. I think Israel Abanikanda loves Pitt. I think Shervasier Dennis loves Pitt. Gabe Hoy, Desmond Alexandra, Brandon Hill. These guys love Pitt. But they're now in a mode where they can't afford to be sentimental, where it has to be a business decision. And so as we keep moving on with this, and like I think you get to a point where you almost start to wonder if anybody who's out of eligibility plays in the bowl game. Like I'm looking down Pitt's list of super seniors right now, right? Derek Kyler, I don't know what Derek Kyler is going to do. I assume he's going to suit up. I don't know if he'll actually get on the field. Owen Drexel, we haven't seen any word from him, so I presume he's playing. Gabe Hoy has announced he's out. Marcus Minor, I presume he's playing. We haven't seen anything from him. Carter Warren announced he's out, but he was already out due to a season-ending injury. Desmond Alexander announced he's not playing. Not Shervasier Dennis. Tyler Wiltz hasn't announced anything. He has no eligibility left, so you would assume he's going to play. But as you move forward and you get to these guys who are running out of eligibility anyway, you start to wonder. Yesterday I wanted to ask Pat Narduzzi about everybody. Everybody who potentially could come back as the super senior, everybody who is out of eligibility. What have you heard from him? What have you heard from him? What have you heard from him? And Narduzzi ultimately was like, I'm not going to answer this, so stop asking me. I'm going to let the players answer it for themselves. Either way, when you look at the guys who are out so far that we know are not going to participate in the Sun Bowl, just running down the list of regular starters, contributors this season. Keaton Slovis, obviously in the transfer portal. Israel Abanikanda, leaving Pitt for the NFL, so he's not going to play in this game. Gabe Hoy, we talked about. Desmond Alexandra. John Morgan went in the transfer portal. Shervasier Dennis and Brandon Hill. That's the 7 we've got so far, in addition to guys who might be hurt or that kind of. I mean, we know Kalijah Cansey's not playing due to injury. When you look at replacements for those 7, though, I mean, I think the obvious replacement for Keaton Slovis is Nick Patty. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I hope that Nick Patty starts this game. I hope Nick Patty goes out and plays well, and I hope he gets a chance to go out as a winner. I think he's been a great program guy for Pitt. I think he's been a great part of the program. He has a respect of his coaches, of his teammates. I think most of the media, we have a lot of respect for Nick Patty and how he's conducted himself over the years. He's just a good kid and a good teammate. And I'd like to see him sort of on a personal level. I'd like to see him go out and have a great Sun Bowl and win the game and get a chance to leave Pitt as a winner, So I think he's the guy there. Obviously at running back, you've got clear and obvious options in Rodney Hammond and Sebo Flemister, Vincent Davis, who I don't expect to see back next year, but he might stick around for this game at least. At defensive end, this is probably going to be the most interesting position in the Sun Bowl. I mean, if you want to watch one position, or if you want to say, well, this position is going to be one of the most interesting as far as what it means going forward, I mean, defensive end is right up there. John Morgan's already gone. Desmond Alexandra is gone. Habo Baldonado, I think, is up in the air. He might be a little bit hurt. I don't know if he's going to play or not. So you're going to have, maybe as many as 3 defensive ends missing out of the starting rotation. So you're looking at Dayon Hayes, Bam Brema, Chris Maloney, Nikai Johnson, maybe even some of the freshmen, Sam Okunlola and Jimmy Scott. Those guys could play in this Sun Bowl and still have their red shirts available to them. And so, I think, and I think you're going to see them all. I mean, we'll see how deep the rotation ends up going. But, Dayon Hayes, you saw him on the screen there a minute ago. He had a great game at Miami. Maybe he can build off of that and have another big game and finish with a couple of really strong games at the end of his junior season. Nikai Johnson is a second-year player I'm really interested to see how he does playing against another Power 5 opponent. Bam Brema, I've heard a lot of good things about Brema. I don't think he's flashed a lot of it on the field this season. He's played a decent amount, and I don't think he flashed a whole lot of that potential, but be interested to see him as a guy getting 40, 50 snaps. which he potentially will get in the Sun Bowl. Chris Maloney, we'll see. I'm not even sure if he plans on coming back or not. I don't know what his future plans are, but I would like to see some of the young guys out. I would like to see Jimmy Scott. I would like to see Sam Okunlola. I'd like to see some of those guys get out there and get some reps because they're the future. And when you're moving on from Morgan, Alexandra, and potentially Baldonado, I assume Baldonado, you're going to be relying on those younger players. You're going to be relying on, obviously, Deion Hayes, who's a little bit older, but you're going to be relying on Nakai Johnson, Scott, Okunlola. Those guys are going to be key contributors. And so it's going to be interesting to see how much they play in the Sun Bowl and, just as important, how well they play in the Sun Bowl. Offensive tackle, you're going to need somebody to step in there with Gabe Hoy out. Carter Warren's already been out. Now, Warren's injury allowed Branson Taylor to get a lot of extra snaps, Matt Gonsalves to get a lot of extra snaps. Those are going to be your two starting tackles, with an opportunity for a guy like Ryan Baer, the freshman, to step in and maybe play some snaps as well. I think everybody would like to see how he played. I think it was the Virginia game. He got some snaps late in the game and just absolutely destroyed a man into the ground. I feel like he actually pushed the guy underground. He pancaked him so hard. So I'd like to see Ryan Baer get a few snaps. He can still preserve his red shirt if he does. But those are going to be your top two tackles, Taylor and Gonsalves. And then you see who kind of rotates in if they end up going a little deeper than just two guys. And middle linebacker with Servassier Dennis out. I think the top option there is going to be Brandon George. Pat Narduzzi said yesterday George will be back and ready to play. He missed most of the season due to injury. He's only played in 3 games. So even if he plays in the Sun Bowl, he'll be able to take a red shirt. So he would then enter 2023 as a red shirt senior with the option to come back in 2024 as a super senior. So you've and he's been the backup middle linebacker for most of his career, really. So I would think he would be the one who would step in, although Shane Simon also got snaps at middle linebacker this season. But I think you put George out there with Simon to potentially give him a few snaps on the bench at middle linebacker, and then you have your outside linebackers, Shane Simon and Bengali Kamara and Solomon DeShields and Tyler Wiltz. You should be able to get a decent, how many guys is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-man rotation, which is pretty solid. And it's largely what they went with all season. Except for when George was out there, but it didn't really last long. He didn't play a whole lot. And then the boundary safety spot, where Brandon Hill is going to the NFL, not playing in the Sun Bowl. You're going to need somebody to step in there, and Judson Townder is already in the transfer portal, so he's not going to be an option. But Javon McIntyre, who you see there on the screen, had an interception at Miami, played a great game in Miami, really, and made a couple big plays. I think there's excitement about him as the future at the boundary safety spot. Now, Donovan McMillan, the transfer from Florida, is going to have something to say about that, and he's going to be competing for that starting job. But I would think McIntyre will be the guy, and if he is, it'll be a great opportunity, like it's going to be for so many of these young players, particularly the defensive ends. It's going to be a great opportunity to sort of showcase themselves and springboard into 2023 when they're going to be counted on to play a lot of significant snaps. So, I'm intrigued. Like I'll say that. I'm intrigued by what this team will look like in the Sun Bowl, intrigued by who's going to play, how well they play, how much they play, and what it means for the future. I know you'd much prefer to see Izzy Abanikanda and Servassier Dennis and Deslin Alexandra and Gabe Hoy out there and Brandon Hill. You want to see all these guys play another game because it gives Pitt the best chance to win. But there is something to be said for seeing the future. And that's what the Sun Bowl is going to be an opportunity to do. At a lot of these positions, it's going to be a chance to see the future. And that's what these opt-outs have done. They've opened an opportunity for some of these younger players to step up and see what they can do. So it'll be interesting. Between now and then, though, it's signing day. That's tomorrow. We're going to have tons of coverage at Panther-Lair.com, as we always do. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, recruiting, and message boards that have been humming. The boys have been buzzing on the message boards, let me tell you, over the past couple weeks. There's been a lot to talk about, and it has been all getting discussed. It has all been getting discussed. There's a better way to say that. On the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you go check it out, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. And while you're here, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair. Panther-Lair.com. Pitt basketball tonight at Syracuse. Didn't even get a chance to break that down, and I apologize. I don't know if we're going to talk about it all too much tomorrow because it's signing day, but we'll get into it. Certainly as we get past some of this recruiting stuff, we will get into the basketball talk heavy right here on the Morning Pitt and on Panther-Lair.com. So thanks for checking in today. Hope you had a good start to the week yesterday. We are one step closer to the holiday weekend. So have a great Tuesday, and we'll talk to you tomorrow morning on signing day for the Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.